My name is Janet Gagan Martin, a consultant working with the Climate Change and Environment Statistics Unit with ECLAC. I'm here to do a video on a methodology to build environment, climate change, disasters, and sustainable development indicators for the online course, Introduction to Environment Statistics. So today we'll be looking at principles for constructing indicators, the methodology for or roadmap for constructing the indicators, and we have 3 stages here: preparation, design and development, and institutionalization. And then we look at some products that can result from building indicators. So this methodology that I will be speaking about comes from Manual 61 from ECLAC. It is a methodological guide for developing environmental and sustainable development indicators in Latin America and the Caribbean countries. And it is based on work done with under an interinstitutional collaborative stages to build and agree on technical specifications of relevant and quality set of indicators that will look at the environment as a whole, components of the environment, such as water, air quality, forests, ecosystems, biodiversity, energy and energy efficiency, agriculture, residuals, that's waste, environmental health and environmental management. And it will also look at situation and trends under climate change and disasters, which are multi-domain processes under environment. So this methodological guide is in the process of being updated and is available on this website that is shown here. So we'll first look at the principles for constructing indicators. So we have 8 principles. We have teamwork, interinstitutional coordination and cooperation, demand-driven indicator sets, a selection of information and organization of the processes, looking at a manageable number of indicators, the strict compliance with procedures and statistical quality, and dissemination using user-friendly and attractive ways, as well as flexibility and perseverance. So first we look at principle 1, which is teamwork, and that under that theme, we would engage the producers, users, compilers, collectors of environment and multi-domain indicators, and come up with an interinstitutional team with a work plan, goals, and leadership in order to build capacity for a common methodology, concepts, and tools so that we can better build these indicator sets. So principle 2, which is the inter and intra-institutional coordination and cooperation. Under inter-institutional coordination and cooperation, we look at work between one or more institutions to come up with the indicator sets. In intra-institutional cooperation, we look at cooperation between and among persons in a particular institution. For example, between the political leaders, the policymakers, and their cooperation with the technical level persons. And this would work also with interinstitutional cooperation and coordination. So under inter and intra-institutional coordination, we note that this is important because of the cross-cutting nature of environment statistics. This kind of work needs some system of compiling different data sets from different institutions to come up with the particular indicator for environmental statistics. So principle 3 is to look at the demand-driven indicator sets. So the first thing is to identify the most important and critical decisions and interventions within the country. This can be found in reports on environment, on policy documents for sustainability, climate change, or disasters in the territory. When these critical decisions and interventions are identified, then we can look at the most useful indicators that would guide these decisions and interventions and come up with a draft list of potential indicators. We would then move on to verifying the statistical feasibility of these indicators, and this would look at the evidence, the quality of the statistical data that is available, and any primary data that can be used to create the statistics. Then in the fourth stage, we would assess these primary statistical sources by looking at data available from surveys and censuses, from from ground monitoring stations and programs. We would also look at remote sensing and administrative records, as well as other estimates and scientific research that have been done on the various data. We would note that building demand-driven indicators would make better use of limited resources in the countries. So principle 4 would be selecting the information and the coordination of these processes. Now, in example 1, when we want to know the number of days when pollutants exceed a certain standard, we would first look at the primary data at the bottom of the pyramid, and these would be stations that collect data on, for example, air quality or water quality. Then in the process data and statistics, we would look at what the data has been compiled into the monthly statistical tables of these specific pollutants and the minimum and maximum averages for a city or area. Then we would look to build the indicators, which would be, for example, the number of days when these pollutants exceed the city norm. In the second example on the right, we would look at the primary data, which is, for example, the population of the country. Under the process data and statistics, we would look at the number of vehicles, for example, in the city or the country. And the indicator would be the per capita vehicles, the intensity of the per capita vehicles. Under principle 5, we would make sure that we arrive at a manageable number of indicators. This is important because each indicator would require some time to come up with the metadata, for example, and the statistics for it. And we would need some to invest in knowledge, coordination, and consultations and decision making. So these first sets should be manageable with whatever available resources are in the country. And please note that each indicator counts and should contribute to the whole indicator set. So principle 6 is to come a strict compliance with the techniques and quality of the primary data. So we need to be sure that the quality of the primary data, the raw material, is good, very good data. With using this, we would be able to describe each indicator in the methodological sheet, and we need a full description of the indicator. Then we would need to carry out consultations with the agencies and the experts who know the value of each of the indicators and the main implications, the use of the indicator, the importance to the country. And we need to sustain a critical working attitude and also evaluate the indicator on a frequent basis. Under Principle 6, we would like the indicator to be displayed in an attractive way. So we want a user-friendly indicator format. This indicator format should also be easily understood by the users of the indicator. There should be sufficient time to train the staff in the design of this, how the indicator would be displayed, and also in the communication platforms that would be used to disseminate the indicator. We should also carefully select the language that is used to present the indicator and the design under which it is being presented. And this, of course, would mean that there would have to be a proper selection of the media used to publish the indicator, whether it is on a website or in a report. And also, we should spend time on launching the indicators so that there is sufficient media coverage and backing from the institutions involved in the publishing the indicator. Principle 8 looks at a flexible attitude for presenting these indicators and perseverance in updating and trying to find data for these indicators when they're unavailable. There always are methodological, institutional, and financial capacity obstructions or challenges to face during this kind of work. So we have to know how to deal with these changes in order to review whatever work has been done to improve on the indicator and the methodological sheets. And if necessary, we would have to remove which indicators may not be working or where we have insufficient or unsatisfactory information. And during this time when working on the indicators that have been selected, we may also find that we can develop new indicators that we may find during our work with other agencies. And we need also to be flexible when doing this sort of work and develop a motivated team who will work with perseverance in figuring out how to build these indicators and keep in mind that what results and products we need to complete these tasks. So in this second stage, we would look at the methodological roadmap for building and maintaining these environmental indicators. So we look at 3 stages. So we have the preparation stage, design and development stage, and the institutionalization stage. So in this schema, we look at the methodological processes, and we see these 3 stages shown. We will look at each of these stages and explain each of them in the coming slides. This is another representation of the previous processes, and we will look at the highlighted second column and the different processes that we will go through later on. Of the methodological roadmap is preparation. And the core methodological process, the steps as seen in the second column from the left, are building the team, training the team, reviewing institutional context, national relevance, and international experiences, The fourth step would be reviewing conceptual frameworks and methodological approaches, and then we would look at prior substantive decisions. In the column to the left are the certain areas that we'll talk about in the coming slides. And then the intermediate products in the third column from the left are the institutional agreements and the decisions on objectives. And then we'll have the final products at the end of all these processes. So under the methodological roadmap stage 1, we have step 1, which is a team formation. And we need here to look at forming interinstitutional committees or commissions, which would include ministries, ministers, directors, and other permanent secretaries, for example. And this would be led by the environment or statistical institution. We would need a leader who would guide and motivate and assure quality control. So the core team would be made up of representatives of technical experts from the main institutions, experts in statistics and indicators, and a dedicated secretary or administrator or leader for the core team. And in this plenary work, there would be training and monitoring going on. And it would also be suggested that it is divided into subject area teams so that you would have specialized groups of indicators, which we would look at later on. Under this, we would also look at a network for a regional network, for example, such as the CARICOM Working Group of Environment Statistics, which could also help to guide. We would also probably need an advisory board of national subject area experts on the various headings such as air, water, pollution, biodiversity, climate change, etc. So under this team that is being built, we would need training, which is step 2. So this can be done using methodological manuals, international environmental statistical recommendations, experiences that are learned from other countries, as well as specialized technical assistance. And these would be in the form of remote and in-person courses, workshops, internships in other countries, webinars such as this one, and technical assistance and training with support through 1 or 2 years from a specialized agency. So step 3 in this roadmap is the review of institutional context and its relevance to the national situation and international experience. So at the national level, we would need to look at the expectations of the users of the data, the indicators and the statistics, as well as the technical teams that would be helping to work on this methodological roadmap. The context of the institutional architecture would be the users and producers of this data. We would look at the national development plans, goals, indicators, any policies such as climate change policies, environmental policies. We would also look at environmental standards and other sustainability objectives at the national, regional level. We want to look at the objectives for the construction of specific indicators, as well as the scale of the indicator. Well, it would be territorial, it would be national or regional within the country. So we'd also need to look at national and local precedents for building environment statistics and indicators and any publications that have already been produced. At the international level, we could look at environment indicator experiences and results, publications of indicators from developed countries as well as countries similar to your own. We'd look at the production of indicators in regional and global agencies, as well as working groups and specialized regional networks, such as the CARICOM network that I mentioned earlier. So step 3 is the review of the institutional context. Would look at a referential framework and the institutions. We would look at the subject areas to be covered, as well as the methodological approach to come up with the type of indicators that we would want to build. Step 4 is a review of the conceptual frameworks and methodological approaches. So these frameworks would give definitions that are guided by environmental sustainability, climate change policies, disaster risk management or strategies, any sustainable development plans in the country or region. These frameworks and definitions would determine the type of indicators that will be produced, as well as any interrelations between these indicators, and it will command the way the indicators are ordered and presented to the users. This would help with the decision-making, policy, and management of indicators. Step 5 is preliminary substantive decisions would be made so that you can analyze, discuss, and decide why these indicators are wanted in the country, any decisions and public policies that we should be focusing on to decide which indicators to build. And then we would build or adapt any conceptual or referential framework to any local institutions and the needs of the country. Then we would need to specify the mandate under which we're going to work and organize a team or interinstitutional system, such as a committee or working group or working groups to work on these decisions and indicators, and to make the necessary decisions. So stage 2 in the methodological roadmap is the design and construction of the indicators. And we see here a schema with the second from the left column, giving the areas that we would look at presently. Sorry, excuse me. Okay. So under the methodological roadmap, stage 2, step 6 is a preliminary list of potential indicators. So meeting with stakeholders in the public arena, we would look at those that deal with environmental, statistical, sectoral, and utility data. Those would include water, energy, transport, and so on. So under the indicator building process, we would come to decisions that would be decided by NGOs as well, and the private sector, as well as from academia. So step 7 is a review of the sources and availability of information for building the indicators. And this would necessitate visiting institutions, interviewing technicians from public organizations, also interviewing experts with knowledge on environmental aspects, and consulting other technicians in various government bodies and research institutes. You could also have conversations with specialists in various areas of environment, such as water, waste, energy, forestry, marine resources, and air pollutants. And after this review of the sources and availability of information, you would be able to report the availability of data and statistics in order to build the indicators necessary. Step 7 continues with looking at the type of sources for data, which are censuses and surveys, administrative records, monitoring system, remote sensing and estimation. And these institutional producers would be Environment Protection Agencies and the National Statistical Office, as well as the Ministry of Environment, other ministries and authorities that are responsible for various environmental aspects such as water, forestry, fishing, mining, meteorology, and disasters, among others, as well as other local authorities that have responsibility for air quality sanitation. And it's also necessary to liaise with research centers and academia in reviewing the sources of information. So step 8 is the development or completion of the methodological sheet for each indicator. So this methodological sheet is really for internal use. It is not for public publication, and it is a vital tool in setting up these indicators, as it will explain the content of the indicator. It will contain the technical specifications for each indicator so that the technical analysis can be done and will allow for a common understanding and construction of the indicator for sustainability over time. It will enable the transparency in the level of progress in the design of the indicator, and would have create a model for the dissemination of the indicator. In future, it would provide a guideline to maintain the comparability of the indicator over time, as I have indicated. With the changing of persons in an agency, there will be a guide for new people to know how to develop an indicator. Under this example of a methodological sheet for forest cover, the name of the indicator is given, a description of it, a definition of the variables to be used in the calculation of the indicator is listed, as well as the formula for calculating the indicator. Any limitations of the indicator are listed, and as well as the relevance to the country or region of the country. A graphical representation of the indicator is presented. The method of collecting the data should be put down in this methodological sheet. The periodicity of the series should also be mentioned, whether it is annually, 5 yearly, and so on. The relation of the indicator to local and international policies or agreements should also be listed, and that is just a sample of the information that is needed for the indicator on the methodological sheet. So step 9 is the formation of subject area subgroups for preparing these methodological sheets. So it is important to break down the methodological sheets into areas. For example, we would have one group would probably look at forest indicators. A second group would look at energy indicators, a third at water indicators. You could have waste indicators, etc., to come up with a set of indicators for the country. Step 10 is a selection of the final indicators, looking at the eligibility of each indicator and making a checklist for this. So the relevance of criteria is according to the goal and objective of a specific policy or strategy. The pertinence and relevance of the indicator is important, as well as the availability of statistical information to compile the indicator. We must also look at the quality of the statistical information, which would also help to look at the strength of the indicator. There must be a simplicity to the indicator. It should not be too complex. It should be clear to its users, and it should be reliable for the users as well as for the producers in constructing the indicator. The consistency of the methodological sheet is important. Presentation that is in the methodological sheet. No indicator is capable of informing about the complexity of the environment or multi-domain phenomenon, but each selected indicator should be of such value to justify its place in the set of indicators. So this is an example of a first set of indicators. It is the environment indicators of the Republic of Panama done in 2006. And we can see there are main topics such as woods and biodiversity, land use, coastal marine resource, energy and transportation, natural resources, water, air, sanitation and waste, and environmental management. For example, for woods and biodiversity, the indicator would look at the forest cover of the territory, the reforested area, the protected area, and the biological integrity index. Energy and transportation would look at the energy intensity of the GDP, the proportion of renewable energy resources in the total energy supply, and the vehicular flow intensity. So step 8 is designing the fact sheet, what the users would see. So this would show the indicator and its trend line. There are certain minimum technical specifications and also the context of the indicator, the interpretation of the results. The fact sheet should be user-friendly and should show different levels of technical depth depending on the nature of the indicator and the presentation format. So this fact sheet is what would be would be publicized, would be disseminated to the users. So an example of a fact sheet is from Canada's National Environmental Indicators. Under this, we are shown a graph of acid rain and the calculation of the indicator sulfur dioxide emissions for Eastern Canada. The context here is given here, as well as the indicators and the actions that would be taken. Some linkages are listed, and here we would see where there are linkages to energy consumption, the ecosystem and aquatic health, as well as linkages to human health. And there are also challenges that the country faces with acid rain. So under step 12, design of the dissemination platform. So after designing the fact sheet, then we would have a mock-up of the disclosure and trial pilots prior to launching this dissemination platforms. So the dissemination platforms would show the set of indicators that are chosen, and this can be done through printed publications, websites, control panels, pamphlets, or disclosure brochures that are put out by the team that work on these indicators. Step 13 is the interinstitutional coordination for external data flow. So external indicators are those whose constituent data are produced, compiled, and stored in offices of institutions that are separate from the institutions that create the system of indicators. So these external data sources are statistical series that come from primary data capture sources of other institutions. Sometimes these may be in formats or units of measurement that must be worked on, and so that we can come up with the correct calculation of the indicators. You may need to do some extrapolation and so on. This data can also be produced or compiled and even published by these other institutions, which are in the public domain and which have responsibility for the system's environmental indicators, but have other pre-established formats and periodicities to what is worked on in the environmental indicator team. So step 14 is the development of the statistical record. And here we would look at this, an example of an indicator on protected areas. So the variables would be the surface area of the protected area, the surface area of the protected marine area. The first one would be surface area of the terrestrial protected area. And then we have the marine area. So we'd have the third variable as the total territorial area of the country. Now, this data can sometimes be sourced from the Protected Area Directorate of the Ministry of Environment, as well as the Environment Protection Agency, and as well as the marine authorities, or the area that is responsible, the authority that is responsible for the total area of the region. So in order to obtain this information, you would need to use official administrative records of the agency involved, as well as the digital format for the entire territorial area of the country. Unit of measurement would usually be in hectares, and this data is often updated on a yearly basis, and the differences from international official definitions should be noted and may be specific to the country, as well as there may be some countries that do not total surface area. Other countries may include water surfaces within the country as a part of the total surface area. So step 15 is the publication and launch event for these indicator sets. So the invitations for this should be extended to principal authorities of the country, including the National Statistical Office, the Ministry of Environment, the Environment Planning Agencies, other ministries and sector authorities, researchers, civil society, universities, and the public. So under this, we would need good media coverage of newspapers, radio, television, and social media to launch this set of indicators. In step 16, we would have institutionalization of an indicator unit and the building of a dedicated team. So after we have had the interviews with users and seminars for the users and launches and local relaunches, we would have the formation of a stable team, the promotion of the usage of the indicators, updating of the indicators, and development of new indicators. And the final products here would be a unit created to build these indicator sets. It would be an environmental indicator unit. It would be there would be an institutional network and leading to an updated system of environmental records. So we would have a complete environmental indicator system in the country. Under step 17, we would formalize this network of for organization, the environmental indicators. So the interinstitutional network would create an environmental indicators unit with a coordinator and statisticians as well as environmental experts. So we would have our subject area units um, and other institutions and specific advisors and specialized thematic researchers that would feed into this environmental indicators unit. So step 18 is the promotion of indicator usage. So we want to create a system where there's continued use for these indicators so that we would ensure that we have an update and dissemination of the indicators on a regular basis and continuing training activities, workshops, and seminars that would give information on these indicators and on their updates. So the target groups are ministries, legislators, researchers, and other users at the highest levels, particularly those who are able to influence the allocation of resources as well as providing political support. In this promotion of the use of the indicators, we would explain the correct way to use these indicators and raise awareness of their usefulness. We would educate the users on how to manipulate the metadata at different levels. And it is important to gather feedback from the users on how they use the indicators, what improvements may be necessary or they feel may be necessary for the continued promotion of the use of these indicators. So step 19 is the updating and development of new indicators. So the environmental indicators support public policies in the main and are useful tools for decision makers in various institutions. In this way, we would, for promoting these indicators, it would be helpful to have their input in updating and developing new indicators as new public policies and are generated. So we want to emphasize the fostering of the network of institutional committees so that we can raise awareness at all levels in these institutions, whether at the executive, technical, or administrative level. Continued communication by telephone and email would be useful, as well as writing for to keep up this communication, and also to develop methodological and orientation material for new persons who may be joining in the process, and preserving this so that we can preserve this technical and executive personnel in case of turnovers. We would encourage permanent human resource networks and this interinstitutional collaboration and teamwork so that in this we can distribute the intermediate and final products to make them available to all participants so they can benefit from the joint effort and see what work is being done in this area. So for the final side, we look at the products resulting from the indicator building process. So the main products are a trained team making up the environmental indicators unit. We would come up with a first set of methodological sheets for the indicators, development of a system for environmental and multi-domain indicators, and this interinstitutional network of committees or formal meetings. I thank you very much, and I hope you have gained from this presentation. Thank you.